What if my truth is wrong? That question makes people uncomfortable. Good, it should, because somewhere along the way, we let a bad idea go mainstream. Your truth, my truth, their truth, as if truth were private property, as if truth were something a person could own, as if the highest form of honesty were not discovering what is real, but defending whatever feels most real to you. And that sounds compassionate at first. It sounds tolerant. It sounds respectful. It sounds like inclusion. It sounds like we are making room for people. But we are not making room for people. We are confusing categories. And once you do that, the damage spreads fast. Because truth is not the same thing as sincerity. Truth is not the same thing as intensity. Truth is not the same thing as pain. Truth is not the same thing as perspective. Those things are real. Some of them matter enormously, but deeply felt is not the same as actually true. Central to your story is not the same as actually true. Helped you survive is not the same as actually true. It may make it important, it may make it understandable, it may make it worthy of care. All of that, yes. But truth is a different category. And if we are going to use that word, then it has to mean something. A truth claim has to survive at least three things. First, correspondence. It has to map to reality. Second, coherence. It has to hold together logically. Third, shared accountability. It has to be something other minds can engage, test, challenge, refine, and build on. All three. Not one, not two, all three. Because if a claim fails correspondence, you have fantasy. If it fails coherence, you have contradiction. And if it fails shared accountability, you have nothing people can actually build a shared world on. That is why personal truth is not just a harmless phrase. It quietly breaks the conditions that make truth possible in the first place. It fails the first condition because it starts by pulling the claim inward. My perception, my experience, my narrative, my reading of events, my internal world. And again, those things are real, they matter. Subjective experience is real, pain is real, trauma is real, memory is real, emotion is real, perception is real. But real and true are not the same word. That distinction matters more than people think. Because reality does not become secondary just because an experience is intense. A person can feel abandoned and not have been abandoned. A person can feel unseen and still be loved. A person can feel certain and still be wrong. That is not cruelty. That is not politics. That is not dismissiveness. That is the human condition. The problem is not that subjective experience exists. Obviously it does. The problem is when subjective experience gets promoted into final authority. The moment that happens, external reality stops being the thing that corrects you and starts becoming the thing you negotiate away. And once reality becomes negotiable, truth is already collapsing. Because a truth claim has to be examinable from outside. It has to allow for challenge, it has to allow for revision, it has to survive contact with other minds. You cannot verify what cannot be examined. You cannot refine what cannot be questioned. You cannot reason with a claim that has been turned into a perimeter. Protected interpretation is not truth. It is insulation with better branding. And that is where whole cultures start to go sideways. Because once sincerely experienced starts getting treated as automatically true, contradiction starts looking like cruelty. Disagreement starts looking like violence. Correction starts looking like disrespect. And then truth stops being something people seek together. It becomes something they perform alone. Inside sealed narratives. Inside private worlds. Inside stories that cannot be touched, not because they are true, but because they are defended. And that leads to the third failure, which may be the biggest one of all. The collapse of shared meaning. Here is the irony. Personal truth sells itself as humane, relational, compassionate. It presents itself as a way of making room for one another, but in practice it eats the ground out from under shared life. Because if your truth is yours and mine is mine, and neither of us can really be wrong, then what exactly are we doing when we talk? We're not reasoning together. We're not pursuing clarity. We're not trying to discover what is actually the case. We are taking turns protecting our narratives. That is not dialogue. That is not community. That is not shared meaning. That is adjacent monologue. And cultures cannot survive on adjacent monologue forever. Communities do not hold together when everyone is sovereign inside a private reality. Eventually, language itself starts to fail. Words stop referring to a shared world and start functioning as shields. At that point, conversation becomes nearly impossible, because conversation requires at least one dangerous assumption: that one of us may need to change, that one of us may need to revise, that one of us may need to admit that what felt central was secondary, that one of us may need to discover that we were wrong. Personal truth is specifically designed to prevent that. Now, to be fair, this did not appear out of nowhere. For a long time, real wounds were dismissed in the name of objectivity. Institutions lied, authorities abused power, people were gaslit, flattened, misread, and told that what they lived through did not count because it could not be externally verified to someone else's satisfaction. That wound is real. So when therapeutic culture pushed back and said subjective experience matters, that was not a mistake. That was a needed correction. Your pain matters. Your interior life matters. Your perception matters. Your story matters. All true. But somewhere in the translation, something got distorted. Experience matters became experience is truth. Pain should be heard became pain cannot be questioned. Do not silence people became do not correct people. And that is where the whole thing went sideways. Because the word truth carries weight, it carries authority, it carries finality, it carries the power to end an argument. That is why people reach for it. Most of the time when someone says, "my truth," they are not really making a disciplined epistemological claim. They are drawing a defensive line. This part is mine. Do not examine it too closely. Do not challenge it. Do not tell me I may be wrong. In other words, my truth functions less like a truth claim and more like a perimeter. And the reason that perimeter feels necessary is understandable. Public truth has often been handled by corrupt people. Reality has been weaponized in rooms where people were already losing. Institutions failed. Authority lied. Facts were used without integrity. People got hurt. That history matters. But building a permanent home inside a wound is still a mistake. Because once your narrative becomes uncorrectable, everything gets sealed in there together. Your pain gets protected, yes, but so does your distortion, your fear, your resentment, your projection, your misunderstanding, your self-justification, your selective memory, your wounded interpretation of events. All of it gets locked inside the same chamber. And once that happens, nothing gets in except affirmation. That is not healing. That is insulation. And insulation feels safe right up until it cuts you off from reality itself. Truth is not personal. Truth is what holds whether you like it or not. Truth does not need your permission. Truth survives your mood, your tribe, your wound, your preference, your resistance, your fear, your politics, and your self-concept. Truth is what is still standing after your feelings have said everything they need to say. That does not make your experience worthless. It just means your experience does not explain itself. Your pain deserves care, but not automatic authority. Being wounded does not make you stupid. It does not make you infallible either. The goal is not to erase the person. The goal is to reconnect the person to reality. Not to flatten what someone has lived through, but to stop pretending private narrative is the highest court of appeal. Because if truth is real truth, then it can confront you. It can expose you. It can overturn your interpretation. It can force revision. It can tell you that what felt central was actually secondary. It can tell you that what you ignored was decisive. It can tell you that the story you built to survive was not the same thing as the story that was true. Truth does not exist to protect your ego. Truth exists to orient you. And if we lose that, we lose far more than a phrase. We lose the ability to reason together. We lose the ability to correct ourselves. We lose the ability to live together inside a world that is bigger than our preferences, bigger than our narratives, bigger than our pain. So the question is not whether your experience matters. It does. The question is not whether pain should be heard. It should. The question is not whether objective language has been abused. It has. The real question is this: if your truth cannot be questioned, cannot be tested, cannot be challenged, cannot be corrected, is it truth at all? Or is it just the name you gave your pain so nobody could touch it?